Good evening, welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the programme tonight, India's ace wrestlers Sakshee Malik, Vinesh, Phogat and Bajrang Punia, who've been at the forefront of the protest against the country's Wrestling Federation chief Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh, have resumed their work in the railways. Sakshee Malik, Phogat and Punia resumed their work on the 31st of May, days after protesting wrestlers were evicted from Jantar Mantar in Delhi, where they had been protesting since April. Since then, they threatened to throw away their medals after making very strong sexual harassment allegations against their federation chief. Both Ms. Malik and Ms. Punia have, however, denied the reports of withdrawing from the protest. They have subsequently met the Home Minister Amit Shah, and who has said that, look, there will be justice, but there is a process that needs to be followed. On our first debate this evening, the meeting between Amit Shah and the wrestlers, will there finally be a solution? Will it be a time-bound solution? Second up on the program, a special interview on the state of the Indian economy with the new president of the Confederation of Indian Industry, Mr. R. Vinesh. He speaks to me about everything from how India is an outlier in a world where, as far as GDP growth is concerned, any problems which may exist on inflation, the manufacturing sector, India's move to a green economy and a lot more. That's coming up. But first, at this stage, let's take a look at the wrestlers issue. It's been on now for several weeks. But is there a sense now that it is completing or coming close to an end after the intervention of the Home Minister, who, however, says that, look, it has to be according to the law of the land? Joining us now, Ashutosh Srivastav, Supreme Court advocate. We're also joined by Dr. Sunita Godara, who's an Asian marathon champion in 1992. Phogat Singh, the former Olympian, will be with us. Rakesh Singh, a coach of and General Secretary of the Haryana Wrestling Federation, many others. But first, let me go across to Dr. Sunita Godara. Ma'am, do you believe that now, with the intervention of the Home Minister, there will be justice?
If it is true, that he has intervened, but meeting with Amit Shah and Amit Shah allowing them to have meeting, that also midnight, giving a slight ishara to police that do your job properly, because now I am meeting the wrestlers. So one way it is good. Secondly, the solution is not only with our Indian law, because it takes time. Now, the International Olympic Committee has also given notice to IOA, and UWW also has given, the United World Wrestling Federation also has given notice. So our sports law has to be in place. In 2016, Mr. Anurag Thakur himself sent to Parliament the bill number 56 of 2016, the National Sports Ethics Commission bill. You call it panel or whatever. The committee which was formed by government, it was just a committee to investigate the thing. It was not a legal body. But what I am talking, as per sports law, as per Olympic Charter, the whole world, 203 countries are following the sports law, and they all have ethics panel, ethics committee, or they call it disciplinary panel. I think that's a valid point. Where they can go and complain, So now, if they don't have that in place, IOC will take action.
Let me get a response to that. You make an important point. Let me go across to Ashutosh Srivastav as well. For too long in our country, we've had sports federations being run by a single individual. There's been this entire debate on whether they need to retire at a particular age or the other, but it's been this fiefdom which has been created. Do you believe that there needs to be greater accountability, certainly in the Wrestling Federation of India?
Whatever the position being held by Mr. Brij Bhushan is as per the constitution, and I do not find that there has been anything contrary previously also. There was no such FIR or any investigation pending against him previously. So far as this FIR is concerned, obviously there are 2 FIRs and the police is doing the investigation, and the police will submit its report, and they will follow the law of the land. And if anybody is of the view that the investigation is not happening in a proper direction, then they can approach the court and ask the indulgence of the court if it is so.
No, but Ashutosh, I'll tell you a couple of points which is problematic in what you're saying, potentially. It's taken 7 odd years for these wrestlers, some of them, to actually come out and complain. Why has that been the case? Is it because there is no structure which exists where wrestlers who have faced sexual harassment can actually go and complain and feel that justice will be served? Is that not a fundamental problem of the structure of our sporting federations, that it's taken 7 years for these women to actually come on record and say this?
Yes, see, if anybody has any such complaint, and if somebody goes and tries to register the complaint, and if the complaint is not registered, so obviously they can approach the higher authority of the police department, or they can also approach the court that the FIR has not yet been registered in a proper manner. But see, while registering the FIR, the police also looks at the prima facie evidence, whatever is available, and the statement being made with the witnesses, and accordingly they register the FIR. Now, as we have seen in this particular case, the 2 FIRs have been registered, one by the minor and one by the
this is not what I'm talking about at all. I know the FIRs. I'm asking you about the structure in our organizations, our sporting federations, where a woman, not one but several, who say that they have faced sexual harassment allegations are coming on record 7 years later, because 7 years back, for whatever the reasons, they felt they couldn't. And here we are telling them, go to the court, go to a higher police authority, and go to the High Court or the Supreme Court of India. Where is the sensitivity in dealing with a basic issue of human rights?
See, there are both the aspects. See, in this particular case, if we consider that the crime has taken place and the FIR which has been registered now, there have been many instances where even the misuse of law happens. I'm not saying in this case, but we have seen many such instances earlier. So to protect the law in a proper way, and the person who really commits the crime should be punished, that is the presumption, that is what is the law about. If somebody has a complaint and if it is not registered, yes, there are other ways of getting the complaint registered.
Always
the
easy
Supreme
to
Court, Supreme Court in Lalita Kumari judgment had clarified that position. That if you go and if your complaint is not registered, bearing in few such cases where the preliminary inquiry
when you are dealing with a case of sexual harassment and sexual abuse, alleged sexual abuse, it's not just about having the strength to go and register a complaint. There has to be a system which enables a woman who has been deeply aggrieved to register that complaint. It's not enough, Ashutosh, to throw the book and say there is the law, file an FIR, file a counter FIR and go to the Supreme Court and then we will assess. That's not the point.
The police is, yes, absolutely. The police is bound to register such FIR.
Right, okay.
And if any police officer fails to register such FIR,
I was talking about the federation, the FIR comes later. But 1 second, Supriya, how do you see this? Do you believe that with Amit Shah's intervention that things will change? There will be some justice?
No, so first things first, Amit Shah had also met the farmers when they were protesting. What changed for the farmers? 750 of them died. And today, please understand what is happening. There is already a reputation assassination, a smear campaign against the athletes. They've had to come on record and deny news reports that they're walking away from this protest, they're walking away from this agitation. Somebody like Bajrang, Punia and Sakshee Malik have now come on record to say that people who are saying medals are available for 15 rupees each are actually pressurizing them and actually intimidating them about taking their jobs away. And they are willing to give up their jobs in the name of justice. That's exactly what the athletes are saying. These are not my words. So I think we have to look at what is happening behind the scenes. Please understand one thing. It did not just take the athletes, it did not just take them 7 years to gather the courage to go and report. It took a Supreme Court to intervene before the FIR was lodged. When they were protesting, they were mercilessly beaten up, hurled abuses at, and dragged on the roads of New Delhi, a stone's throw away from Parliament. And please understand what has followed since. They said they will give up their medals. The government kept mum, looked the other way. This is the heights of hypocrisy. And may I also say, there is a lot of callousness here, because the Prime Minister has called them mere ghar ki beti hai, and then he doesn't even bother to ask what is happening. What is India's sports minister doing about it? He gave them assurances in January. What has followed since? What is the Women and Child Development Minister doing? There's a POXO registration. What is NCPCR doing? Why had NCW not taken suo motu cognizance? There are many, many questions. I think these are India's most decorated athletes, and irrespective of political allegiances or not, They need to be given justice. And justice doesn't come in the din of the night because Amit Shah meets. Justice comes what the police is doing. The police did not file an FIR without the Supreme Court having to intervene. The police hurled abuses at them, dragged them on the roads of New Delhi. And now you are telling me that justice is going to be delivered because Amit Shah has met them. I'm not as hopeful, maybe you are.
Ratan Shadda, how would you respond to that? That there is this stigmatization, this process of insult. Yes, they were dragged through the roads. They were not allowed to protest where they wanted to. It has driven this very accomplished group of Indian citizens to the point where they said we're going to throw our medals away into the Ganga, right? I mean, before we say that, look, there will be justice, there is an FIR which is now being filed, and of course we will follow the procedure. Should we not understand that the process has thus far been deeply insensitive?
First of all, let me say, I have said earlier also on social media, not appeared any debate on the wrestling issue because it's an issue which requires much more sensitivity than politicization. That BJP has not handled it sensitively. They could have done much better than what they have done so far. They could have been much more compassionate to the wrestlers when the whole thing started. But it was just formal way of talking to them, and things didn't go the way they hope they will go because there are enough people who exploit the situation, and they exploited the situation. And they made all kind of, showbaji which resulted in such horrible instances where the issue was not taken to the right conclusion. Secondly, when you say why 7 years, Me Too movement started a few years back when people came with 20-year-old tales. So any woman anywhere in the world finds it very difficult to complain about sexual harassment. It took a lot of courage and the movement started when people came out. So to say that why 7 years, people have come after 10 years of harassment, 20 years harassment, their own sexual exploitation by the family members and all that. So it is an issue on which women don't come out easily. To say that it only happened in this case is stretching logic too far. Thirdly, the issue of the wrestlers being manhandled or mishandled was after the FIR had already been filed, after investigation had already started. It was a day when they were not supposed to go where they were going, and police stopped them. So to make it into some kind of molestation of the wrestlers and forceful confinement is also not correct. Thirdly, now investigation is going on. That is what Amit Shah must have said, and they have gone back to their jobs. If they don't have faith in investigation, they can again go to Supreme Court and force the investigation. That is the next possibility. But to say nothing will happen and we don't see any justice coming, the Congress who is shouting so much, they didn't want to bring what about. Their own leader has been accused by their own leader in Assam, and what action has Congress taken? We as a society are insensitive. Arre baba, pata hai mujhe. We as a society are insensitive to women issues. Let us accept it as Congress party or whether it been BJP government.
No, I agree, Ratanji, with you. It is a larger issue. No, but Supriya, I know you have a point and I'm coming to you next. But I do believe that Ratanji has raised some important points. As a society, we are deeply, deeply insensitive to women's issues in this country. And for someone like him to actually make this point is a recognition at so many levels that look, we have a profound societal issue. In not just this case, but any issue that concerns crime in women. It's just it's disastrous in our country. So many years after we've got the best laws in the world with the post Nirbhaya, we still have this sort of situation.
And I can't agree with you more, but that's not the word I will use. I will not use.
Whichever government, police does not take right time action at the right time, so Nirbhaya or any law will not work till police takes action, and that is where the problem lies. That police plays in the blind or plays ducks and drakes, that is what the problem is.
Okay, Ratanji, 1 second, let Supriya come in.
BJP party.
Right,
that's where the problem lies.
Supriya, go ahead before I go across to my other panelists.
Vishnu, I would rather use a word called disgusting and not distracting. It is disgusting what we do to our women. Please understand what is happening, and I say this as a woman, I say this as somebody in public life. Wherever it happens, whichever state, is disgusting. It's not about
what happened to Youth Congress President?
Sir, please don't speak in between.
No,
I gave you the courtesy.
Let's not, Ratanji, let's not politicize this issue.
She did it.
No. Okay, so both of you, if she's done that, I missed it. That's right. Supriya, let's not politicize.
I did not say anything, and I will not take it lying down.
Let's stick to wrestlers. Let's stick to wrestlers.
In English, I said it doesn't matter which state it happens in, whether it's Congress or BJP. There is no place for women. And where is the justice? How am I politicizing it? What you are doing is cheap politicization. Let me say it over and over again, being a woman. I am not speaking as a Congress spokesperson. Please understand, these are the most known women of our country. And see what we are doing to them. You think it's going down well with the world? You think it's going down well with people who are, with little girls who aspire to be a Sakshee Malik or a Vinesh Phogat? The summer camps have gone totally empty because parents are not willing to send their daughters for wrestling. That's point number one. And a very brief point I want to make. I don't want to politicize it, sir. But Kuldeep Singh Sengar, Chinmayanand, Uttarakhand, it's all happening under your watch. And so I will ask the question, why? Why this apathy towards women and perpetrators of crime against women? I will ask this question, sir, because Indian girls need an answer to this question. Don't tell me where I should go or should not go. And please don't smile on this issue. You have an extremely smug smile. Don't do that.
No, 1 second. Let's not get personal. Let's not get personal. Supriya, would you like to respond?
It is not smug smile.
Sorry, Ratanji, respond.
It is not smug smile. It is my horror. It is my ridicule that you go by, say I'm not politicizing, then you start counting whatabouts. Did I make any whatever statement? One statement made here, no answer.
Yes, you did. You started with Assam. You were telling me these girls have been...
All right, 1 second, Supriya, let him reply. Supriya, it's only fair that he... Supriya, let him reply. You made your point.
He's spoken between me and only paying him back in his own penny.
Go ahead, Ratanji, you have a right to reply, yes.
That you say I will not play politics, then start playing politics. My issue is simple, whether Nirbhaya law, any law, unless the police is made accountable, unless the office bearer of any association are made accountable, these things don't work. Laws don't work unless people work. And
who does the police report to, sir? The Delhi
all right, both of you half a second. Let me go across to Supriya, half a second. Let me go across.
No less than that.
Supriya and Ratanji, let me move this to somebody who we all respect as one of our great champions. He happens to be on our panel today. Phogat Singh, former Olympian and one of our greatest ever hockey players. Thank you, sir, very much for spending your time with us. When something like this takes place, do you, as somebody who's given your life to Indian sport, feel that ultimately it's just talk, and when push comes to shove, no one really cares?
See, ultimately, we are not a very sensitive society. Since many months, they are struggling and they are telling each and everybody who is responsible for all these things, but nobody is listening them. That is see the mindset of the people like Brij Bhushan. He is saying it is a 15 rupees medal. See, look at the mindset of these officials. Because ultimately, if you are looking at that angle, ultimately nothing will happen in this country. Either it is Amit Shah or Modi ji, those who are talking too much on these issues, that they are first for the country and everything is else. But ultimately, these are the flag bearer of the country. And if they are behaving with these stardoms who are carrying the Indian flag, and I see there is something very seriously wrong in it.
Yeah. Let me just go across to at this stage to Rakesh Singh. Rakesh ji, the point that has been mentioned is that there was no system in which these women could complain. वो पहले कंप्लेन नहीं करते थे क्योंकि शायद रेसलिंग फेडरेशन के अंदर कोई सिस्टम नहीं था जिन्हें वो जहां वो जाके कंप्लेन कर सकते थे. कोई सेंसिटिविटी नहीं था, कोई ट्रेनिंग नहीं था. सेक्सुअल हैरेसमेंट के बारे में शायद लोग बात नहीं करते थे और शायद लोग टॉलरेट करते थे. मामला यही था, प्रॉब्लम यही था.
नहीं, देखिए, फेडरेशन के अलावा भी साई जो है अपना काम करती है वहां पे. फेडरेशन का इतना ही काम है कि बच्चों की मदद करना, बाकी सारा हमारा स्पोर्ट्स अथॉरिटी ऑफ इंडिया काम करता है. और जहां तक सवाल है इन पहलवानों का, सलाम करते हैं हम इनको और सलूट किया और हिंदुस्तान ने इनको अपने पलकों पे बिठाया. लेकिन हिंदुस्तान में अभी भी 3 बेटियां मेडल लेके आई हैं. मैरी कॉम जैसी बेटी हमारे पास है, पीटी उषा जैसे हमारी बेटी हमारे पास है. तो ये इन्होंने इतना सेंसिटिव मामला क्यों बना दिया? ये बेटी गलत भी तो हो सकते हैं. एफआईआर जो दर्ज होती है वो सत्य थोड़ी होती है, लेकिन पुलिस उस पर जांच कर रही है, उसको जांच करने दें. और जहां खाप पंचायतें और जो राजनीतिक दल, बीजेपी से जो अलग दल हैं, वो लोगों ने मोर्चा संभाल लिया. पहलवानों का धरना तो 3 दिन का था, वो खत्म हो गया था. और साइड कमेटी की जो भी थी इनके सब बच्चों के बयान दर्ज हुए, सबकी रिकॉर्डिंग हुई, फिर ये एफआईआर की बात करी, एफआईआर होगी, अब दिल्ली पुलिस जांच कर रही है। तो यही बेटियां नहीं है भारत में, हमारी बेटियां और भी हैं। एक आम के लिए और खास के लिए कभी भी कानून अलग नहीं हो सकता। ये हिंदुस्तान में अपनी नौकरी इनको अभी प्यारी लगी, क्योंकि नौकरी से इनको हटाना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि नौकरी और धरना एक साथ नहीं हो सकते। आज इनका जो है, आज इनका ईमान कहाँ चला गया? ये बच्चियों को न्याय दिलाने आए थे, ये तो आज नौकरी में भाग गए वापस। और हरिद्वार इन्होंने एक फिल्म बनाई,
एक सेकंड
सबसे पहले अपने मेडल इकट्ठे किए, उसकी वीडियो बनाई।
one minute
गए तो भी अपनी वीडियो बनाई।
राकेश जी एक मिनट, फरगत सिंह रिप्लाई नहीं, राकेश जी प्लीज।
तो फेडरेशन पे कब्जा करना था, इसलिए ये लोग आए थे। और ये
नहीं, ब्रिंग डाउन राकेश जी एक मिनट। फरगत सिंह, यू वांटेड टू रिप्लाई टू दैट? फरगत सिंह, गो अहेड।
विष्णु जी, ये लोगों का माइंड सेट ऐसा है कि पता नहीं ये फेडरेशन की बात है, पता नहीं एक पार्टी की बात है, पता नहीं। मैं हैरान हूं इन बातों से कि ये इतना बड़ा इशू है। ये इसको बोल रहे हैं कि ये एक पार्टी की बात है, ये फेडरेशन पे कब्जा करना चाहते हैं, इसलिए बोल रहे हैं। कोच साहब, आई रिस्पेक्ट यू, बट एट द सेम टाइम आप ऐसी बातें मत करो जिससे हमारा ओवरऑल कंट्री का जो मैकेनिज्म है स्पोर्ट्स का, वो शर्मसार हो। आपको ऐसी बात नहीं करनी चाहिए। ये हमारी बच्चों की बात है, हमारी बेटियों की बात है।
कलंकित कर दिया इन्होंने। आप ये सोचिए,
हमारी
1000 बेटियों को कलंकित करने का इन्होंने काम किया है। बेटी जो माइनर बताई जा रही है,
सुनीता जी,
उसने शायद अपना केस वापस भी ले लिया।
one second, राकेश जी, 1 second, 1 minute. Sunita, go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, don't shoot the messenger. They have brought out the issue which is everywhere, you see in all, not only sports arena, everywhere sexual harassment is going on. If these girls have come out and raised the issue, don't shoot the messenger and say that they are lying or party or khap or anything else. Issue क्या है उस पर बात करिए. Secondly, अगर हमारा स्पोर्ट्स कमीशन होता, स्पोर्ट्स मिनिस्ट्री के पास होता, आईओ के पास होता, तो ये ब्रिजभूषण जो आज इतना खुला घूम रहे हैं ना, इनको 10 साल पहले बैन कर दिया होता। बिकॉज आवर स्पोर्ट्स चार्टर, स्पोर्ट्स लॉ सेज एनीबडी हु डज द मिसबिहेवियरल कंडक्ट, दैट पर्सन, वेदर खिलाड़ी और द ऑफिशियल, शुड बी बार फ्रॉम स्पोर्ट्स। सो ब्रिजभूषण 10 years पहले जब इन्होंने 2012 फर्स्ट टाइम व्हेन दे कंप्लेन, दैट टाइम इफ आवर सिस्टम, स्पोर्ट्स सिस्टम would have been in place,
it
that
would not
person
have
should be
happened,
barred
is
from
what you are
sports.
saying.
And
All
now
right.
international coach साहब ध्यान रखिए, इंटरनेशनल ओलंपिक कमेटी वॉच कर रही है। आपके पास में स्पोर्ट्स कमीशन नहीं है, डिसिप्लिनरी पैनल नहीं है, स्पोर्ट्स मिनिस्ट्री के पास में नेशनल कमीशन नहीं है, आईओए के पास में डिसिप्लिनरी पैनल नहीं है, एंड दे कैन टेक एक्शन बिकॉज यू हैव साइंड द चार्टर, आईओए हैज साइंड द चार्टर, एंड स्पोर्ट्स मिनिस्ट्री 203 कंट्रीज के साथ में चार्टर साइन किया है कि वी विल हैव डिसिप्लिनरी पैनल। वेयर इज योर डिसिप्लिनरी पैनल? सो डोंट से एनीथिंग, फर्स्ट यू कीप योर थिंग्स इन प्लेस, डोंट से इट वाज पॉलिटिक्स और एनीथिंग एल्स। इशू पे बात कीजिए, इशू करेक्ट है, कितना करेक्ट है कितना नहीं है वो तो जांच बताएगी, बट डोंट ब्लेम दीज गर्ल्स हु हैव ब्रॉट लॉर्डर्स फॉर द कंट्री एंड दे हैव गट्स, so much of guts that they came out. ये पूरे हिंदुस्तान की बात है. It's not only with these 7 girls.
Sunita ji,
it is happening everywhere. So issue has come up. Don't shoot the messenger.
Sunita ji, got your point. Supriya, I agree with you 100%. Supriya, go ahead.
I just have one thing to say. We were discussing why did it take them 7 years to come forward and file their complaint? Exactly this. Exactly why they took 7 years to come forward, because their reputation assassination is happening right here on national TV. That FIR झूठी है. किसने आपको बताया FIR झूठी है? Open intimidation. नौकरी से तो हाथ धोएंगे. क्यों धोएंगे नौकरी से हाथ? Who's intimidating them that their jobs will be lost? I mean, let us not shoot these girls. It took them a lot of courage. It took them a lot of pain to come out there and say, this is what happened to us and our colleagues. Is this what our laurels and victors deserve? It's horrifying that somebody can say this and get away with it. A man who's in the eye of the storm is saying 15 रुपए में medal मिलते हैं. Good touch, bad touch. What exactly are we talking about? I have a daughter and I've told her if a man touches you, you take him to the cleaners. How do I say that? when my most decorated colleagues are being meted out with वो झूठा FIR लिखवा रही है. A woman takes a lot to file a complaint. Now you are saying all the charges that they have put is wrong. क्या हो गया आपकी नैतिकता को? क्या हो गया इस देश को? और हम नेशनल टीवी पर बैठकर ये बात कर रहे हैं, उनको झूठा साबित कर रहे हैं, इसलिए वो 7 साल से नहीं आई थी. अब समझ में आया आपको?
Ashutosh, would you like to come in?
I would only like to say that many a times such incidents happens, not only in India, in many countries, and there is a process of law which is followed, and obviously if somebody does any such grave offense should be punished as per the law. But yes, one should not come to a conclusion, because after the FIR, it is the investigating agency to investigate the matter and bring the truth before the court, and the court to take proper actions and see what is to be done, and if whether the crime has taken place, not taken place, what punishment should be penalized or being given. So that is to be decided by the court during trial. One more thing, that for such incidents or for such complaint, I don't think the entire country should be blamed, or the prestige of the country should go down like this. Yes, if there is some issue, we are sufficient, we are enough as a citizen of this country.
Why shouldn't the prestige of our country go down? The prestige of our country has gone down if you've got champion wrestlers saying that they've been sexually harassed.
Absolutely. So we must cooperate with our legal system. We should have the faith in the legal system, which is taking its course. And once many are saying that why he has not been arrested, and many such questions are being asked also. See, in Arnesh Kumar judgment which took place in 2014, Supreme Court had clarified that where the punishment is 7 years or maybe less for the offense being registered, it is not mandatory to have the arrest. If the accused is cooperating in the investigation, if the accused doesn't cooperate,
I think the point that Supriya made, Ashutosh, is important. The FIR was lodged after the intervention of the Supreme Court. Look,
yes,
let us just hope that at this stage, I'm interrupting because I'm wrapping up and I'm out of time on this. But let there be justice and genuine justice. And to be shaming these women, is just outrageous, and it's something that it's just despicable, considering the seriousness and the severity of the allegations that have been made. I'm going to leave this at that. We're going to turn our attention to something completely different, the state of our economy. I'd spoken to the new president of the Confederation of Indian Industry, Mr. Vinesh, on a whole host of issues. That's coming up right after this. With the new GDP growth rate numbers out, the India story remains positive. It's positive just not from a national standpoint, but if you look at India, compare it with other comparable economies or any large economy in the world, then the numbers do indicate that we are headed in a positive direction. But there are obviously concerns. The manufacturing sector needs to grow more. Inflation is a constant concern, perhaps less than it has been in the past, but perhaps a lot more needs to be done as well. To discuss that and a lot more, we are joined by Mr. Dinesh. He's the new CII president. Thanks very much for being with us. So let's talk first about the GDP number, 7.2%. That is higher than what was initially projected. Is this where you expected India to be at this stage?
Thank you. And yes, to a great extent, I think it's nice to see it slightly exceeding, but we were hoping actually it would be so. And that is because when we looked at the survey which we had done with our CEOs, we actually found more positive feedback coming in the last quarter. But having said that, that gives us the confidence and the comfort that the year ahead, I think we will not only be able to weather the global storm, but also make sure that the India still stays, as you said, way ahead of the rest of the world. Yeah. So our belief is that that places us in a very strong position to be able to get a 7.5 to 7.6, and I would veer towards a 6.7 rather than a 6.5 as the rate of growth.
The IMF has projected, about 5.9% next year. Significantly lower than a lot of our own projections. So how do you actually assess that?
No, I believe that things are definitely far better at the ground level than the 5.9%. That's why I'm saying that we are looking at around 6.7% rate of growth. And if you look at all of the factors at the ground level, I think that would be a more likely scenario from a CII perspective, and which is exactly what I think has happened in this year as well. As you said, the number has surprised on the positive side rather than as was expected that it will be lower.
Why is India a global outlier?
I would say there are three facts for that. First is the fact how we managed, or I would call it kudos to this government for having managed the coming out of COVID scenario, where instead of spending on trying to increase consumption, they actually kept the powder dry for spending on infrastructure. This core focus on infrastructure has actually led to a virtuous cycle. What is a virtuous cycle? It has meant that the money becomes more available for the domestic consumer. That has driven up domestic demand immediately after COVID. That has attracted the attention of the rest of the world that maybe we are, as you said, become a significant outlier, and therefore capital comes in to invest into India. And as that increases, or as the demand in India increases, the opportunity for export then comes in. So all, I would call it, this virtuous cycle of growth has well set in, and of course that is all based on the transformational reforms which have taken place over the years, and you see the outcome of that. Maybe you would have seen it earlier if COVID had not happened, but compared to the rest of the world, the fact we are shining, or significantly shining higher, is the way in which we smartly manage coming out of COVID.
Do you believe the impact of the Ukraine war, which isn't ending anytime soon, it appears, continues to be having some sort of bearing on us? For example, food inflation was a concern internationally, not just India. Do you believe that that is still a factor for us? Of course, the entire fuel situation we managed differently than many other countries, and that's worked to our benefit. So two factors linked to Ukraine, food insecurity or food inflation, and the entire fuel situation. How would you address these?
So there, I mean, you have actually voiced the exact what I would call the headwinds or potential headwinds which we have looked at, right? And that the Ukraine crisis does not become any worse, and that or any other new geopolitical issues does not arise. That is, I think, a core focus or core challenge which we will face if anything happens on that front. As of today, I think that is being taken into account when we look at that this continuation need not affect us.
Right.
Inflation and, let us say, any other actions which the global markets may take or global countries may take to offset it is definitely a big issue. As of now, again, we don't see anything negative on the anvil. If you look at US or Europe, which were all, we were thinking that they may get into recession, even though there have been few quarters which this has happened, I don't think it's significant for us to worry about. Having said that, on the domestic front, monsoon is something we wish to watch out for. Again, El Nino does not necessarily mean that it is every El Nino is a bad year. So those are the reasons why we are, I would call it, more realistically optimistic than we were earlier.
Are you optimistic about the agriculture sector, given that the IMD has said that it's going to be a normal monsoon plus minus 4%?
The two reasons for that. One, like I said, we also heard that there is going to be the Indian Ocean Dipole, which I think has always resulted, especially in some of the, some parts of the country actually getting significantly higher amounts of rainfall. And at least from what we hear today from IMD, I don't think there seems a significant cause for worry, even though certain pockets may be affected.
Right.
But that may still be something which I think we as a country can manage.
Sure.
And you did mention about food security. I think India has again done a lot of work in terms of making sure that we may not really have challenges on that front.
Right.
So I do believe again that they are all factors which we need to be watching out for, but not something which need to worry us immediately.
Let's talk a little bit about fuel. We are importing Russian fuel. It has served us quite well. It's brought down costs. We are, of course, re-exporting a lot of the fuel that we import. Tell us about how that's a move that has integral benefits to our economy, and we have seen that over the last several months.
I think we have to obviously laud the government in terms of the effort which they have taken to make that happen. Not just the focus on Russia, but also making sure that we have the best, we have to protect our interests first, which is what I think Indian industry is thankful for. And as of now, we are assuming that will continue. I don't think that scenario is going to change dramatically, because even if you look at the price caps, etc., they're going to benefit us rather than vice versa.
Sure.
So all in all, again, factor to watch out for, but not a worry.
Okay. Let's talk about the manufacturing sector. The growth has been a problem. Financial year 2023, a growth of just about 1%. What is CII going to do to sort of address or talk a little bit about the manufacturing sector? Is it sort of lagging behind where we would ideally like to see it?
So yes, if you look at the whole year FY23, it has been a 1%. But if you look at the last quarter, both from actual rate of growth and also the GVA rate of growth, you actually see manufacturing having come back quite significantly. And that, I believe, is actually the forerunner for the future. In fact, the forecast for 23-24 is based on the fact that manufacturing will come back.
Right.
And why do we believe so? I think, the fact that, at least I have been going as part of CII, every country you visit to, the significant level of interest to look at India, for its domestic market and then as an export destination is very, very high. And many of those investments have actually started to come in.
Right.
So that, I think, is what will really help us from a overall, I would call it anecdotal evidence which we see today.
Sure.
But equally at the ground level, from CII side, we are obviously making sure that we support not only the manufacturing sector, but also work on the cost of doing business, which I think has been a core focus for this government. And in fact, we are saying we will do a cost of doing business survey for sector-wise, so that then we can identify what further needs to be done to make Indian manufacturing more competitive and actually help it grow. Obviously, we are also working on the MSME sector to support them, because they are the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 partners of the larger corporates. Yes. And these are the two core focus areas for us to support manufacturing.
Inflation is below the Reserve Bank's threshold of 6%, but some would suggest that we need to bring it substantially lower. Are you happy about where we are presently as far as the inflation rate is concerned?
I mean, I would say that 4.7% compared with what is happening in the rest of the world is a very, very comfortable situation to be in. And India on the whole has had higher rates of inflation in the past and managed. So therefore, inflation is not good, definitely, but we don't believe that inflation should be curtailed at the cost of growth. And RBI has never done that in the recent past. So I believe that will be the case by which we will look at.
So you don't expect any further RBI changes to the rates and things like that to bring down inflation any further? You believe it's okay where it is?
Yes. In fact, our recommendation to RBI has been first the pause, and I think the stance was actually earlier aggressive, meaning that there could be a rate increase. We are saying that now that it has come to 4.7, that they could actually look at a neutral stance.
Sure. I just want to come back to the fuel question. Last year, global Brent crude prices hit a record of $130 a barrel. They're down now to almost half, about $75. But that's not been passed on to consumers like you and me at one level. Some would suggest that if the benefits of that were transferred to consumers, then you would spur a lot more growth, a lot more spending would be possible, etc., etc. So how do you see that?
See, actually, if it's a fine balance, right? Because if you look at it on the other side, you want the capex investment in infrastructure to continue, and obviously a portion of this funding is going to go to support it. So therefore, I wouldn't say I would be trying to be dictate as to that should be passed on. Rather, I would say continue the focus on capex, continue the infrastructure spend, make sure that the cost of doing business of India comes down. That itself will generate, like I said, the virtuous cycle starts when the cost of doing business goes down. It's the same as inflation.
Sure.
You could always say a higher rate of inflation will mean higher rate of growth, but people will suffer.
Right.
So we don't want that negative scenario taking place in the same cost of making sure that if you give more money to the consumer, yes, it could spur demand, but it could affect other things.
One of the key focal areas for India is obviously a green economy going forward. As CII president, how is that something which is going to be a key issue of yours? We've got our 2030 goals as well. There are huge expenses involved in so many sectors to make this transition. For example, the auto sector is in the middle of a transition at so many levels. How are you at CII going to be focusing on that as you work with industry?
In fact, that's one of the very core focus areas for us, and for 3-4 reasons. I mean, you also mentioned some of them. First is that sustainability is going to be part of every activity which we do. It is not some separate plan.
Right.
I think this government and the Prime Minister have actually very clearly articulated where we are going to head and how are we going to get there.
Right.
Now the question is, as you said, how does industry and the government work together to make that transition?
Right.
I see there are two challenges in that. One is what you said, which is funding that, and making sure that as we move towards a transition, we are not affecting our economic growth and our ability to be competitive as an industry.
Right.
So whether it is access to capital or access to technology to make it even more sustainable, I think that's one core focus which we will be working on. The second is making sure that we have, I would call it the necessary parameters laid out in place, for example, energy storage,
Right.
and managing how we work with the states in terms of creating the necessary infrastructure if you are going to move from to EVs or to any other form of alternate fuel. So whether it is mobility or energy transition, I think the two core focus areas for CII will be on how we manage the funding and the access to technology for that, while at the same time balancing the growth requirements of the economy.
So two questions on two separate sectors. One of them you've referred to briefly, the auto sector. You're talking about batteries and storage technology. There's this huge mismatch between the cost associated with the manufacture of batteries and the need for them, which is absolutely important. Unless the costs of manufacturing batteries go down dramatically, then that entire auto sector going forward will be difficult for the middle class consumer to actually engage with. They'll be looking for options which are cheaper and yet which are dirtier. How do you emphasize this as a real concern going forward as India tries to progress to our 2030 goals?
I think the first priority from a CII perspective is to look at public mobility. And if you solve that big challenge, then I think you are already building, so to say, the ecosystem to enable you get the cost of manufacturing down. So I think the way I would look at it is make sure that we get an ability to get clean and green mobility at the public level or public transport level, which I think are the cities, the city movements, etc. And then look at what all we will need to do for sector-wise.
Sure.
We will definitely be looking at sector-wise studies in terms of how we approach this. And as you know, it is not just EV. Today there are various alternative technologies which are also being talked about and which are coming.
Sure.
So the green hydrogen machine is something which we will look at. We will also look at seeing how we can support some other form of higher technology product manufacturing. So all of it is in different stages of evolution, and as the evolution progresses, I think we just need to make sure we make the right choices. So from CII side, we will support that.
Right. One final question, the IT sector. This is something, we are a digital economy at so many levels right now. But some would suggest that if you look at the IT sector and manufacturing together, semiconductor technology is so very important. How do you see India as a major semiconductor manufacturer going forward, absolutely essential in propelling our digital economy and helping manufacturing at so many levels?
So two of the core focus areas for CII is actually to make sure that I would call it we harness new technology to our benefit. And in that there are two elements, which one is digital, I mean obviously usage of AI and I would call it the responsible usage.
You are wary of AI, are you?
No, I'm saying the responsible usage of AI, right? So we want to make sure that we actually harness it to the benefit of the industry or the benefit of the people and not actually make it in the reverse, because as you have been seeing very recently, there have been a lot of concerns raised as to how it could be misused.
Yes.
The second element of it is on the semiconductor itself. Actually, we are forming a task force to work with the government and see how we can support, and both from a private sector or private to private partnerships, as well as obviously the government will be working on, I'm sure, bringing in, and we want to work to support that.
Right.
So we are forming a task force which will work with the government and support the semiconductors and see what we can do to make that happen.
Right.
So whether it is advanced technologies or harnessing the use of what I would call the intelligent uses of digital data, that's what we will be supporting to make sure India is future ready.
All right, Mr. Dinesh, congratulations. CII President, awesome responsibilities over there. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the time.